GeekCastRadio.com presents the GeekCast Radio Top 100 Animated Films Countdown.
Hello, Gotham. Joker's back in town.
Hello and welcome to the GeekCast Radio Network's Top 100 Animated Films Countdown. I am one of your hosts, TFD and Mike, and joining me is Optimus Solo. Hello.
Oh.
Movie Revolt Dan. Hello.
Hello.
And of course, Steve Megatron. Hello.
Hello.
Today we're going to be counting down the films from number 100 through 81. As we said in the intro, we are not telling you people anything about honorable mentions until the whole countdown is over, because it's just going to spoil it and it's going to create way more speculation that's needed. That isn't needed, I should say. So we are going to get to the countdown right now.
100.
All right, starting the countdown off, and our number 100 spot is Waltz with Bashir from 2008. Had 296 points, and it was only listed on 4 out of the 20 lists that were submitted. The highest person to rank this film would have been Movie Revolt Dan himself, who had it at his number 2 spot. So Dan, we should start with you. I know you're probably upset that it's already being listed, but maybe you're happy that it's listed at all. I don't know. What is your reaction to number 100?
Well, geez, way to start it off, I guess. It's tough. In some ways, I'm really happy it made the list, because it is not the most popular movie out there. I mean, a lot of people haven't seen it. It is a foreign film, but there is an American cut of it that is in complete English. It's an interesting film because it is like a documentary and animated movie kind of combined. But I really hope, like I talked about in the intro before this even started, that, yeah, the number thing are important, but what's really fun about lists for me is discovering movies. And of all the movies we get to, hopefully I'll get to discover some. I hope some people will go out and try to discover Waltz with Bashir. It is one of the most emotional, draining films I've ever seen in a good way. It's very powerful. The animation is crisp. It's unique. It's a hard movie to watch, no doubt. It deals with some severe issues. It's about these Israeli veterans as they try to relive what they did in Lebanon. This guy kind of goes around and trying to get all their stories, because they all tend to forget what happened in some way. But it's really well done. It was the first animated film ever to be nominated for Best Foreign Film, so it has a lot of acclaim. So I really wish it was a lot higher, as you can tell just by my ranking of it. So I'm a little disappointed, but I'm happy it's on the list, and hopefully you go ahead.
So do you honestly, just saying, because a lot of times what happens is we'll make our list and we'll submit them, and then when time comes closer, we'll be looking over our list, and some of us may question or say, well, maybe I didn't quite put that one high enough, or maybe I put that one too low. Do you honestly feel that one's the second best animated film of all time? I
do believe it's one. If I was the way I kind of looked at my list, when I was ranking them, I'm like, if I was going to give someone an animated movie and say, hey, this is showing the power of animation and showing what you can do as a storyteller and how animation can be used to tell interesting and powerful tales, Waltz with Bashir is one of, obviously, number 2 on that list for me. So without a doubt, and animation on top of that, which I think the animation enhances it, and even if this movie wasn't animated, it would still be powerful. So,
and some people might have heard that I said that it was only listed on 4 lists, and you might be questioning, well, if it's only on 4 lists, how could it have made our top 100? And that would be because of how high it was ranked on those 4 lists. It had an average ranking of 17th amongst those 4 lists, so that's definitely how it garnered the points necessary to break and crack into our top 100 list. Rotten Tomatoes gives this one a score of 96. With the critical acclaim that it got, I have no problem with it appearing on our list. I don't feel as strongly as Dan does about it, but I definitely think it deserves a spot somewhere. Mike, any reactions to Waltz with Bashir at number 100?
Nope.
Steve?
I've never heard of it, so no.
And I think that's the case with a lot of people, especially the more mainstream or casual moviegoers. And it's fairly recent, within the last 5 or 6 years. So I think maybe as time goes by, it'll garner a little more popularity. But hey, number 100, starting off with a foreign film, nothing wrong with that. And we'll see where we go from here.
99.
All right, moving on to number 99 now. We're going to stay in the 2000 decade here, and we are going to go to 2005 from DreamWorks for a 99th film, which will be Madagascar.
Oh, God.
307 points, which meant that it was about 11 points higher than Waltz with Bashir. It appeared on 8 lists, so twice as many lists. The highest it got ranked was 11. And
my Dan's sister.
I'll go last on this one because maybe you guys will say some good things about Madagascar before I go.
Okay, the only thing that I like about the Madagascar franchise is the penguins. They were the best thing about that entire franchise. DreamWorks is a studio that constantly, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they constantly go with big name stars for voice actors. I have absolutely no problem with this, but the voices that they got for this franchise overall, not just even this one film, I just don't like the stories. The animation looks great, but the story is it's too far-fetched for me.
See, it looks like all the other DreamWorks films. As far as it looks good, animation's good. Voice acting I have no problem with. The voices are fine. For me, Madagascar, from a dialogue standpoint, from a plot standpoint, from a story standpoint, just fell flat all the way across the board. I watched this with my nephew and niece, and I was like, this is one of the worst animated films I've ever seen. What
did you think of the penguins? Did you like them?
I like the Penguins of Madagascar as a series. They weren't enough in the movie to save it for me. I've never had this much of an adverse reaction to any of the DreamWorks films as I did with this one. I just really do not like this film. Dan, what do you think about Madagascar?
I think it's a harmless movie. I think it is one of those computer animated movies that I think what I did like about it was how a lot of the motions of the characters were kind of throwbacks, and like they would act like cartoon characters of just through their actual motions. But like you said, it just kind of, it's there. Some of the music is pretty fun, and some of the voice acting is funny, but it's just, DreamWorks tend to have paper thin movies. Occasionally they break out with a good film, but Madagascar was on my list. It was near the very bottom. For number 99, I have no objections. I do think it's not nowhere near as good as Waltz with Bashir, but yeah, it is, like I said, it's a harmless movie.
Okay, now you got to preface that with, you could say that now about every single movie that we list until we get to whatever you have at number 1.
Yeah, it's just still stinging a little bit. I'll get over it. I'm just gonna pout in a corner and I'll come back.
I said this back when we did the top 10 film genre countdowns, and I'll say it again here. I hope to God none of the sequels for this franchise outrank the original.
It will be something to keep track of as we go through, if we have sequels listed, how they compare to their originals, etc.
Yep.
Steve, any knowledge on Madagascar?
Yes. I actually put that in my top 20 just because it's one of those few animated films, at least by DreamWorks, that I can sit and kind of enjoy, only for the fact that it's more of one of those fun, kind of goofy, cartoony kind of CG films. Whereas, there's not a lot there in dialogue or plot. It's pretty flat and all that, but I do like a lot of the characters, the portrayals, the voice acting, the music, and then of course everybody loves the penguins because they're freaking hilarious. They could have made a whole film on that, and that would have done way better. But no, it's one of those few of the DreamWorks films, because I'm not fond of most of them anyway. It is one of the few that I can stand to watch more than once. So I'm fine with it being where it's at. I had it in my top 20, but that's only because I was trying to give some love to DreamWorks.
Found it where you could.
Yes.
All right. Well, so we have Waltz with Bashir at number 100 and Madagascar at 99.
98.
All right, next up on our countdown, we're going to stay with the more modern films here at number 98, and that is with 2013. And I should mention that it is the first time we will see a sequel so far on our top 100 list, and that is Despicable Me 2. We will definitely be keeping track of how sequels fare. We already have our first one in Despicable Me 2. I will say out of the world of sequels, it's not a bad choice. It only appeared on 5 lists, but it was ranked pretty high amongst those. It had 310 points, and the highest it was ranked was by TFG1 Mike himself at number 6.
What the hell is wrong with the other 4 people? Are you serious?
What's wrong with you?
No. What's wrong with the other 4 people? This is easily at least top 75 or top 50.
Yeah, but you ranked at number 6.
Well, that's because I enjoy it so much, and it's a damn good movie.
Oh, this reminds me of when we did the comic book movies, and Iron Man 3 was number 1.
Oh, stop it.
You have a memory of like 5 seconds. It's like, that's what I just saw, so it's number 6.
No, actually, it's not because of that at all. It's because it was a damn good movie, and it was because it was hilarious, and it was continuing the story from the original.
I will say we've taken a step in the right direction because we started with Waltz with Bashir, which had a Rotten Tomato score of 96, and then we went to Madagascar, which we didn't mention, but it had a Rotten Tomato score of 55. Now we're back up to 76, so at least we're headed back towards the right direction, possibly. I have no problem with Despicable Me 2 as a film. I love the franchise. I absolutely loved the first movie. I think this one did not compare to the first one. I'm not saying it was bad in any way, but it did not live up to the level that I enjoyed the first one. Being in our top 100 list as a sequel, I don't have a problem with Despicable Me 2 being there. I don't know how you would rank it in your top 10 of all time, but we'll leave Mike to that. Steve, did you have a chance to see that yet? I know it just came out.
Yeah, I actually did see Despicable Me 2. While I did like it, I would have to say that I still like the first one much more than the second one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there was more to it in the first one, and there was just, I don't know, not that the second one wasn't fun, but it was very predictable from the get-go. Yeah. What was going to happen for the entire film, and I kind of was in and out mentally in that one, whereas the first one I didn't really know what the heck was going on, even though I kind of knew what was going on, but it was still different.
One of the reasons why I ranked it 6th of all time is because of the fact of the story with him and the kids, because it was a damn good story. Yes, I agree with Steve. The villain thing, mysterious plane crashes, villain fakes his own death. Yes, that is very predictable, but going from the first one to this one to the second one, I was like, how are they going to further the family story? And I really enjoyed how they did that. Dan, and plus more minions.
Dan, I don't believe you're a fan of this franchise. You have not seen this one?
I'm not saying I'm not a fan. Like, I ranked the first one. I haven't seen the second one yet. I'm not as big as I think all you guys are. I think they're fine, but I doubt if I saw Despicable Me 2 before I made my list that it would make it. It would have to majorly impress me. But yeah, I did rank the first one, but I don't know. I can't really comment because I haven't seen it. So.
Yeah, like I said, I think the second one's a far step away from the first one, but I still enjoyed it. I think they, the minions make that. What separated the first and the second one for me is this first one had much more moments that just stuck with you, much more dialogue moments, quotable moments, just things that just kind of stuck with you, whereas the second one still had the minions and it still had some of the characters, but it didn't have those moments that stuck with me as much.
It was a lot of throwaway gags.
Yeah, it wasn't like that thing where you're like thinking about it later on, or if someone said that, you'd be like, I remember that. It was like, I honestly can't really recite a single line from the second one, whereas I could give you about 10 or 12 from the first one. So that's kind of what separated it for me. So yeah, that's our first sequel to appear on our list. And we'll have to wait and see if we get any more during this section of the countdown. Let's see what's next.
97.
All right, that's right. It's time for our 97th film on our list, and we cannot escape films from the last 10 years. Specifically going back exactly 10 years for number 97, and that is Disney's Lilo and Stitch from 2003. It was on 6 lists, had 310 points. The highest it got ranked was number 8 by Mr. Michael Wilson. And like I said, we keep going in the right direction. Rotten Tomatoes gave this one an 86, 10 points higher than Despicable Me 2 got. So number 97, Lilo and Stitch. Mike, what is your reaction to that?
I think it's great. I don't know if it should be at 97, maybe somewhere in the 80s, but again, it's one of those films that has a very wholesome family story. It has great comedy bits with friggin' Ving Rhames as Cocoa Bubbles. And everybody remembers Stitch's blue punch buggy line. It's just an amazing movie. It really, really is.
Steve, have you seen Lilo and Stitch?
Yes, I've seen every Disney movie animated wise. We actually have a Disney chest with all of them, but periodically go through them. But yeah, I mean, I've seen this one a couple times. It's not a bad film. I think I overlooked it with some other films that I probably could have left off my list in place of it, but I still would have probably ranked it close to this end of the spectrum, probably not quite this low. No, I mean, I agree with what's been said already, though. I mean, it's pretty fun. There's a lot of moments with trying to civilize this scientific beast and having the crazy scientists and everything else going on. So I mean, it's fun.
I think definitely for its time period when it came out in 2003, it was everywhere. I think a lot of that generation really gravitated towards this film, and it was kind of like a pretty good success, I think, as a franchise. It was obviously a little bit later in my movie watching time for animated films. I think it does. I think the franchise deserves representation somewhere here in our top 100. So I'm not having a problem with it. I didn't rank it super high, so I have no problem with it falling here in the 90s. Dan, what about your opinion of Lilo and Stitch?
I think it's a fine film. Of all like that Disney's resurgence of like the 90s and really early 2000s, this is probably like their swan song. Thinking back to all their classically animated films, this is probably the last really solid one that Disney did before they went the more CGI route. But it's your classic kind of a kid and dog situation, with your crazy pet and whatnot. But it was a sweet story. It hit the right beats, and it wasn't exceptional in any ways. But it compared to like a lot of the other stuff that was coming out through Disney, like around that time period, like Brother Bear and other things like that, it was step above all of those.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nail there. Out of that group of Disney movies that was coming out, it was probably the best that they had to offer. All right, well, we have had our first Disney film. Let's see what we have next.
96.
All right, for number 96, we are going to stay with Disney, but we are going to finally break past the year 2000. We're going to go all the way back to 1995 for a movie that I didn't think would make this list. But coming in at number 96 is a Goofy movie from 1995. When you think of Disney animated films, this might not come to your mind right away. It was on 8 lists. The highest it got ranked was actually 46th, so nobody ranked it really too high in the like a top 50 type film, but it did get ranked on 8 lists. Mike, your opinion on a Goofy movie coming in at number 96?
I think it's a fun spot for it. I really enjoy a Goofy movie. This is one of those Disney movies that I enjoy the sequel more, because when the sequel came out, Extremely Goofy Movie, it was still in that time of extreme sports where all the rage and everything else. And with a Goofy movie, it's got a good story. It builds on Goof Troop's animated series stuff and everything else. And it's just, again, it's one of those, it's taking a character like Goofy and actually giving him a story. Having a son and having to deal with neighbors and all this and all that. I really like it. I almost think it should be maybe in the 70s on the countdown.
Steve, what's your opinion?
I really like Goofy in the sense of when he's actually in something where they give him a plot, kind of like what Mike said. I liked the whole dynamic between him and his son and, having his neighbor Pete and everything else. And it's I don't know. It takes the antics of Goofy, but actually gives him some meaning. Plus it adds that kind of family dynamic to it as well, because he's having to cope with the fact he's a goofball, and his son is kind of trying not to do that, but does anyway. So I mean, it's kind of it's one of those kind of feel good family type Disney films of that era.
Before we let Dan go, I do have to say, when I think it was the first time we interviewed Jason Marsden, when Tara and I talked with him, we asked him about doing Max Goof, and he said it was just an absolute blast, and very few people can mimic Goofy's a yuck, and he did his own version of it, and it was just really, really cool. And he said that working with Bill Farmer, who is the voice of Goofy, was just absolutely hilarious. So it just goes to show you that you can take a comedy character and actually give him a really good story to wrap around.
Dan, when you think of Disney films, do you think of a Goofy movie?
Honestly, not really. I put this at number 98 on my list mostly because I remember liking it as a kid, and I was a fan of a Goof Troop television series, and a Goofy movie was a decent extension of that. Around what are we at? Here it's a fine number for it. I probably would have put pretty much every other movie we've gone ahead of it. Maybe not Madagascar, but like you all said, providing some layers to the character of Goofy, who usually is just that goofy sidekick who is prone to his physical comedy, but providing some depth to him, providing him with a son and giving him the opportunity to be more than just that gimmicky sidekick. It was well done. Considering that it was based upon a television series, and usually those movies are horrible. It did pretty well. It's been a while since I've seen it. Like you mentioned, I do remember, like Mike mentioned, I do remember watching the sequel, and I personally was not a big fan of that one. But yeah, I mean, if anything, it's going to prod me to go back and revisit it because it's been a while.
I think for me, it's not. Dan, you said it was a movie based on a television series. I didn't see a Goofy movie that way, even though that's kind of what it is. I saw it more as, hey, Goofy's getting a shot in the spotlight. Like, Goofy's been around for so many years, and he's had his physical comedy all that time, and now they're actually writing him into a real story and a real adventure. And I thought that was one of the greatest things about that film.
Yeah, I could see that, but I never saw Goofy as the main character for that movie. I always felt his son was really the main, protagonist, and he was just he was there. He was the name, as they say. But I really didn't think it was his movie. I felt it was more so, if anything, he shared it with the son character, Max, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our first 5 films of the countdown. Let's see where we go from here.
95.
All right. Not that this couldn't have been predicted, but at times during the countdown, it seems like we may get heavy doses of Disney. Our number 95th film of the countdown is sticking with Disney, but going a little bit further back, all the way back to 1988, and that would be Oliver and Company. This movie appeared on 7 people's lists. The highest it got ranked was 18th. Beat out a Goofy movie by 1 point for the spot of 95. I guess I consider this somewhat of, I know it's not like, it's weird because I guess I consider classic Disney like anything before this and anything before it. For me, all falls under classic Disney, even though that spans a whole heck of a long time. Because I really don't feel like it changed until, Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid is when I kind of have it, my resurgence in my head, even though that doesn't seem logical. Oliver and Company coming in at number 95. Dan, how do you feel about this one, and especially compared to the last 2 movies on the countdown, which have also been Disney, and a Goofy movie and Lilo and Stitch?
Oliver and Company has never been one of those Disney movies I've really had been all that involved with. It's funny that it comes out in 1988 because for some reason I always think it came out a lot earlier than that. It's one of the most forgotten in some ways. So it's fine. I think it is that movie that hit right before Little Mermaid. So it was on the right path as Disney was rediscovering itself, considering a lot of the other '80s cartoons Disney put out in that or other cartoons Disney put out in that decade. One of the better ones from what I can remember, but I thought, like, I could be wrong, but I remember like All Dogs Going to Heaven came out around the same time, and I always gravitated towards that movie more than Oliver and Company. But I could have the years mixed up because I'm not really sure.
All Dogs Go to Heaven was depressing as all hell. Ugh.
All right. What is your opinion of Oliver and Company then?
So much better than that other movie. No, I mean, this is, I believe Katzenberg was still at Disney at this time. I could be wrong, but I think he was. And this is one of those movies that I don't mind it being star-studded because you have star-studded singers in this movie. Billy Joel, Ruth Pointer of the Pointer Sisters, Bette Midler, and it's basically a Disney version with animals and humans about the Oliver Twist story, and I really love this movie. This is one of my favorite Disney movies.
So are you upset that it comes in at number 95?
A little bit, but I don't, because a lot of people like Dan might not pay it a lot of attention. So
I think Dan's pretty accurate, though, that it's kind of one of the forgotten Disney films. It's not like he said, most people probably think of it and think that it's just as old as, like Lady and the Tramp and Jungle Book and those types of films, when in reality it's only a year removed from when they get to Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
I think most people would be surprised to learn that. I think you just kind of assume that it's older. But I think it definitely does get lost in the shuffle. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but when you think of Disney movies, I mean, I think of Oliver and Company before I think of a Goofy movie. But I would list a lot of other ones before I eventually remembered Oliver and Company. Steve, what is your opinion about this one coming in at 95?
It actually completely slipped my mind. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but no, I mean, it's not a bad film at all. And I will agree that it kind of looks a lot more dated than say Little Mermaid or some of those other ones. I don't know if it was a change in animation.
It was definitely a change in style. I don't know if it was a change in the animation department, but between Oliver and Company in '88 and The Little Mermaid in '89, it was a definite change in style.
But it's I mean, it's not a bad story or a bad film by any means. It's just I think that's kind of why it may have gotten either A, forgotten, or B, this low on the list, is because people kind of equate it to like a early to mid 80s kind of film.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So that is 3 Disney movies in a row. Let's see if that streak can be broken.
94.
All right, like you said, we're up to number 94. We were going to see if we could break this Disney streak. We have jumped forward 8 years from 1988 to 1996, but we are going to stay in the world of Disney, and this time for a little bit different Disney film here. James and the Giant Peach was on 8 lists, which is one more list than Oliver and Company appeared on, and the highest it got ranked was 22nd. A Rotten Tomato score actually on this one was 93, so it's ranked pretty high amongst that crowd. And kind of in giving our reactions to this, looking back here, because this is the 4th Disney film in a row, get each one of your reactions if we have this in the right order, as far as going from Lilo and Stitch to a Goofy movie to Oliver and Company to now James and the Giant Peach, Mike.
I never cared for this film. I'd seen it a couple of times after it was on VHS, and I don't know, it's just one of those stories that I just didn't care about. The animation is nice, but I would rather watch a Lion King sequel than this.
Whoa.
Fair enough. If you just went on based on Rotten Tomatoes, it would have gone Oliver and Company with a 43, Goofy movie 53, Lilo and Stitch 86, and then James and the Giant Peach 93. Dan, what's your reaction to the order of these 4 Disney films, and then James and the Giant Peach just in general?
Of all of them, I do think James and the Giant Peach is probably the best, and I would probably say Lilo and Stitch is probably after that. And a Goofy movie and Oliver and Company to me are kind of, they're about even. At a given day, it could change back and forth. But regarding James and the Giant Peach, that book was one of my favorite children's books growing up as a kid, and I actually came to it around the same time the movie came out, and I did love the movie as a kid. I haven't revisited it much as an adult, but the animation's great. I disagree, and I think the story is really fantastic, and it's really well told within this movie, and it keeps very strictly to the book, well, as much as you can, and overall, it's really well done. And I'm a big fan of like stop motion animation, and it's done really well here. And I actually didn't even realize James and the Giant Peach was a Disney movie, so
I didn't either until I was doing this, and I was like, oh. It's kind of like a Goofy movie. It's not one that you would list off when you're listing like the best Disney movies. It doesn't come to your mind as one of them, as a Disney film in general. I'm not saying as a good film, but yeah, it's definitely one that you don't realize is a Disney film. Steve, have you seen James and the Giant Peach?
Yes, I have. It's not a bad story by any means. I do think that it does have it kind of does what films are supposed to do, and that's take you kind of out of your problems of life and put you in a immersive, different location, which is kind of what this story does. I didn't personally put it on my list, but that's more so because I had seen it one too many times as a kid between school and everything else, so it kind of grades on me. That, and I'm not a fan of the animation at all. It reminds me of Nightmare Before Christmas, I hate that film in general, like the Nightmare Before Christmas, not this, but so it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me on this one, but I don't have a problem with it being on the list whatsoever, though.
Mike, out of the 4 Disney films that we just listed, which one's the best?
Out of the 4 that we just listed?
Yeah, Lilo and Stitch, Goofy Movie, Oliver and Company, and James and the Giant Peach. James
and the Giant Peach is last. The animation is okay, but I'm not a fan of stop motion animation in a lot of things. I mean, I like it when, like, if it's specifically done for like toys and stuff and toy reviews, but stop motion animation with Disney and any of the animation companies, I cannot stand it.
I'd rather watch Lilo and Stitch than the other 3.
You guys are crazy.
All right. Will somebody be able to beat up Disney and take over here? And we will see heading into our next movie.
93.
I think it's fitting that we have a film like this that will stop the Disney streak here. We're going into our 93rd film on the list, and we're only going 2 years after James and the Giant Peach. We're going to 1998, and this will be our first entry from a Marvel or DC film. I'm lumping those together. I know they're different, but for category purposes, I'm putting them together. So coming in at number 93 is 1998's World's Finest, and I am going to just turn it over to Steve and Mike and Dan.
I'm going to let Mike go first on this, and then I'll go after.
Okay, so first of all, some background information on World's Finest. It was originally a 3-part episode arc in Superman the Animated Series, which they then turned into a made-for VHS DVD film, and they basically took out the intros and the outros of Superman the Animated Series and made their own credits around it. Watching the film as a film, I find it so much better than watching the individual 3-part episode arc. This is in the DC animated universe. This is the first time Batman and Superman meet. The film structure for the story of this is so well done because you don't like when I first saw this as the individual episodes, I was like, ooh, Superman the Animated Series. But wait, why are we in Gotham? Oh crap, there's the Joker. What the hell is going on here? Bruce Timm and his team structured this story so well where you have the villains meet first and the heroes have to team up to take them down afterwards. The animation is spot on. The voice acting is spot on. The story is beat by beat, beginning, middle, end, and it's just so amazing. It really, really is. Steve?
I really love this film. I mean, you have the great voice acting of Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy, Clancy Brown, Tim Daly. So I mean, it's those are the most iconic voices of those four characters anyway, and that's the number one thing. The number two is you have the main two of the DC villains and DC heroes going head to head in this episode. Even to some degree, the heroes going head to head and the villains going head to head with each other. So I mean, it's kind of a real big kind of 1-2 punch between everybody. And I would definitely rank this pretty high, not as high as two other DC Universe films, but I rank this as my number 20 on my list, just because of that fact, and then how great the story is.
Well, this is something like I'm not trying to compare it to Waltz with Bashir, but in comparison, it was only on 5 lists. So what helped both World's Finest and Waltz with Bashir was how it was ranked on those limited number of lists. So even though it was only on 5 lists, it was average rank of 31st. It falls all the way down to 93rd on ours. And once again, we can turn to Mike because you had this ranked higher than anybody else at number 8. So before we get to Dan's thoughts, are you just happy that it's on the countdown since it was only on 5 lists, or are you upset that even though you ranked it at 8, it comes in at number 93?
I think it's a movie for superhero fans, specifically Batman fans, and villain fans and Superman fans. All it's a movie that could have easily been at least in the lower of the top 60, like somewhere between 60 and 59 if more people voted on it.
Between 60 and 59.
60 to 51. Thank you very much, jerk. It's one of those things where it's got so many unexpected moments. There's a moment where Joker and Lex are discussing it, and in the background, their henchwomen, Harley and Mercy, are having a fist fight. And you just hear all the background noises, the oops, the ughs, and all that stuff from them fighting. And, you hear Harley scream, "Banzai!" and all this and all that. And it's a very, very interesting movie. And it's just one of those things where you don't expect half the things that happen in it. There's a scene where, the movie's been out for a number of years, so I'm going to spoil it because I know Kevin doesn't care because he doesn't watch superhero stuff a lot of the times. But there's a scene in it where Superman scans Batman's mask, and Bruce Wayne at the end of it, at the end of that section of scene, Batman has put a tracer on Superman. Superman finds it, crushes it, and says "touché." I mean, it's just amazing, and the chemistry between Lex and the Joker is just amazing. It's just an overall amazing movie. I am kind of disappointed it's in the 90s, but I'm still glad it made the countdown. I think it should be somewhere around, like I said, just under the
and a half, right?
Yeah, shut up.
I think it should be 59.
Dan, we haven't got your thoughts on this. World's Finest, number 93.
I don't know. I don't nearly think it's as high as Steve and Mike do. To me, it's just 3 episodes of a cartoon put together. The story is it's the same type of story you always get when two superheroes meet in comic books. Like if you look at any like Marvel team up or any DC team up, that's the same type of plot line. You have the villains of each character, combine, and they have to fight the common enemy. They don't like each other at first. If you look at this and then compare it to something like, I don't know, The Dark Knight Returns, you just realize that there's no comparison. It's fine. Like I do like the Batman, obviously the Batman animated series and the Superman animated series, but I don't think it's anything special. To me, it's just, all right, here you go. If anything, it just putting this into a movie just to me was just a ploy to, package a DVD and sell it. I don't see it as nearly as amazing as you guys do. I don't.
Well, I mean, it's a 3-part episode though, so I mean, it still fits together nicely as a film.
Yeah, I mean,
were you trying to compare it to The Dark Knight Returns?
No, what I'm saying is if you look at, you're talking about the interplay between Batman and Superman, it's far more interesting if you look at something like The Dark Knight Returns.
Well,
far more depth
but that's
there.
a totally different dynamic.
Yeah, that's a completely different dynamic.
Yeah, it's also better done and more interesting. And what I'm saying is, this is just kind of it's a cartoon for kids, so it's it's basic and straightforward. And yeah, there's 3 episodes, but the X-Men cartoon had the Phoenix Saga, which was like 5 episodes. If I put that into a movie, would I say it's better than a lot of things? I don't think so. It's, to me, it's just, yeah, it's, you want to put it on the list, fine. I think in the 90s is serviceable, but I don't see it as this amazing feat that you guys do. It's just, it's been done. This type of story, the world's finest story, has been done a lot, and it's been done a lot better in a lot of different areas, comics or even other, straight to DVD movies. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Roger Ebert of the GCRN. The point here is, though, at
That's
the
good.
time when it happened,
I would take that count and wear it with pride.
When it happened, no one expected it to happen. Yes, BTAS and STIS were still ongoing at the same time, but nobody ever. I remember seeing advertisements for this on TV for the 3 episodes, and I was like, wait a second, what are they doing? It was for fans of those characters, for fans of that cartoon universe. No, it is not just the Batman cartoon, Superman, all that DC animated stuff is not just a kid's cartoon. A kid's cartoon is friggin' Teen Titans, for Christ's sake.
I will play devil's advocate here and kind of the middleman of this. I will agree with Dan. It probably doesn't deserve to be that high on the list. It's good that it's on the list. Yes, it was a 3-part episode and probably a ploy to sell it as a DVD anyway, but it's still a 3-part episode. But I will also argue that it is comparatively better than the X-Men cartoon or the Spider-Man cartoon of the era, because the Bruce Timm verse is actually a lot better written than a lot of the 90s animation was at the time.
Which is fine if you want to compare it to other animated. I mean, you're looking at the acclaim wise, where you think, oh, this is an amazing feat for animated television.
No, I wouldn't say it's any better than like comparing it to like Mask of the Phantasm. Then no, Mask of the Phantasm kills it because there's a lot more depth to the film than what's in this.
If you look at like an animated movie, the idea of doing an animated movie, to me, it's like, what are you doing within that medium that is different, or how are you using that for in an interesting way? This, like, I don't think, yes, they maybe edited it better for the overall like DVD release, but I don't think anything enhances. It becomes enhanced by being on a DVD, like getting it on a DVD or watching it on television. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same thing either way. Then if you were to compare it to something like the direct to DVD releases of DC, they do something with that format, and for most of them, and there's something more enhanced compared to your television series. So what I'm saying is, yes, as a TV series, great, but as a movie, I think it fails in comparison when you look at movies that do similar storylines and have similar characters.
I think what we've done here is discovered 2 things. Number one, that eventually we need to have a discussion just strictly based on Marvel DC movies, and number 2, that this is the first GCRN debate ever that I've completely had no impact or input on. No. All right.
That's because you're an anti-hero.
I guess. So we've had our first Marvel or DC appearance. We're about to have a first of something else with our next film.
92.
All right. So we are moving into our number 92 slot on our top 100 film. Like I said, we are about to have another first, because this time we're actually just going to flip the numbers on that last one. Last one was 1998. We're going to be in 1989 now for our first anime entry on our top 100 list, and that is Kiki's Delivery Service. Like I said, from 1989, it was on 7 people's lists, and the highest it got ranked was actually all the way up to number 4. And I should mention,
you guys are done. I don't watch anime.
And it deserves to mention that a Rotten Tomato score of 100 currently for Kiki's Delivery Service, which is not something that's easily garnered. Dan, I'm sure you're going to have the most to talk about with this one, so let's start with you.
Of all of like Mizuki's films, this is probably the one lower on my list. Not because it's bad, just because it's probably one of his most straightforward films, and I do enjoy it. I do feel though like it doesn't immerse you into the world quite like a movie like Spirited Away does, which is a hard comparison because that's the comparison like a movie to like Citizen Kane. But I do like it. I think the characters are strong. It is like with any Matsuki film, he creates a fun world of all these different quirks, a lot of detail. If like someone like who he is a good comparison to is someone like Del Toro in the way he creates his world, because it's all in the details. Same thing with this, just the the delivery service aspect of it, using witches and taking different things like witches and switching them and doing his own thing with them. But the what's interesting about like the delivery service is there's very like limited conflict. There's like no really antagonist per se compared to some of his other movies. So that's kind of why it's lower on my list. I'm glad it made it. I'm curious to see what other Matsuki films make it. There should be a whole bunch more, but for me, this is good, but it's not nearly as great as the other stuff.
Mike has obviously blatantly pointed out that there is at times an anti-anime bias here. So Dan, looking at this one as our first anime film, is it showing our bias that it's in the 90s? Should it be higher than that, or what are you what are your feeling as far as a first anime film on our list and where it's ranking? Is it completely skewed?
I ranked it 71, so I'm not completely that far off. Like I said, of all the anime that I have had on my list, it's probably, or all the Matsuki films, I don't think, for me, I know a lot of people have like a high opinion of it, but it just didn't have the same impact as a lot of his other stuff. So I don't think it's a huge bias. I don't think it's one that is adored as a lot of his other films. So in the 90s is fine. I think you can make an argument for the 80s or the 70s, but anything beyond that, I think would be pushing it a little bit.
Any comments from Mike or Steve on Kiki's delivery service?
Nope.
I will admit it's not on my list. There's certain anime I'll watch and certain I won't. And this is where I kind of take a page out of Mike's book with, I see a trailer and I either don't care, or I don't say that it's going to be crap necessarily. Not that he says that every time, but if it doesn't entice me,
really hurts.
if it doesn't, yeah, I know, I'm just dagging, hitting that dagger just right. But no, I mean, if it doesn't entice me to see it with the trailers that I've seen of this stuff, I just won't watch it. It's not that I have a dislike or a hate for it, because I do like certain animes, primarily in the TV series realm. But technically, this is also a Disney film, because the second English track that it got in '97 was by Disney. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a kind of complete opinion of it. I remember when it came out, and I saw commercials for it back in the day, but I can't argue one way or the other.
All right. Well, that's our first anime film on our list. We'll see where we go from here, running out the first 10 of our group here.
91.
All right. Well, let's go somewhere where we haven't gone since number 97. We started our countdown off with a bunch of modern movies, and then we got away from it for a while, got attacked by Disney. We're finally making it back into more modern movies and back to DreamWorks. Rounding off our first group of 10 at number 91 is 2012's Rise of the Guardians. It was on 6 people's lists. The highest it got ranked was 24th by Mr. Wilson again, 335 points. I have not had a chance to see this yet.
I haven't either.
So I'm not going to be able to talk a lot about it. There was a lot of hype to it. I remember it kind of sounded like an attempt to do what they did with what happened with Shrek in a different, in a different way, kind of taking the traditional holiday and different types of characters like that, and then try to do what they did with Shrek. But I wanted to see it. I just never got a chance to it. Dan, have you seen this one? I
have. I caught it on HBO. HBO has been blasting it for the last month or so on repeat, so I finally sat down to watch it. I was not a fan, I must say. I think this is going to be a movie that is forgotten within the next few years. Yeah, the concept's interesting, but it is so poorly done, and it's really a huge mess in my opinion. And yeah, it too feels like, we talked about like star-studded cast. It does feel like just big names that they got in and threw it in. Like Hugh Jackman plays the role of like the Easter Bunny, and it doesn't work. Not a lot of the voice acting just doesn't work, and I don't know.
Wait, so Hugh Jackman went from Roddy the Rat to the Easter Bunny? Oh boy, talk about being flushed away.
Wow.
It's another DreamWorks movie that he was in.
I know, I got the pun. I'm trying to forget it. Like I'm trying to forget Rise of the Guardians. I don't know. To me, I think if you did this list within the next 5 years from now, it wouldn't even be on it because it's going to be forgotten.
So this is one of those that's just because, like you said, like something that people have seen recently, so it's on their mind.
I think so. For me personally, I don't really know many people that. I guess obviously we have 6 people that liked it, but I don't know many people that did, and I don't know many people that it has a lasting opinion on. So,
Steve, have you seen this one?
Yeah. I mean, the story is not very, I don't know, complex in any means. But it's got a star-studded cast, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good movie, as we've seen with actual live action films. You can have all the star-studded people that you want in a film, but that, it can still be crap. I enjoyed, as far as like some of the voicing is concerned, like just the actors themselves, and then I enjoyed the animation style, because it's slightly something different, but this is another example of DreamWorks kind of continuing failures.
Yeah,
screwing the pooch, I think, is the term you're looking for.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little bit more clean, but yeah, that's that about rounds my thoughts on it.
All right. Well, Rise of the Guardians, kind of a subjective one. I think a couple of us wouldn't have this in our top 100. So comes in at number 91, so I guess at least it wasn't any higher. And we'll see where we go next as we start our next group of 10.
90.
All right, so after our quick visit in 2012, we're going back to the past. I wasn't sure how many of these we would see, but we have our second sequel to make our top 100 countdown. We'll see how many we get in all, but coming in at number 90 is An American Tale 2, Fievel Goes West. It was on 6 people's list. I guess I had it ranked higher than everybody else.
You did.
Maybe a bit too high. I'll admit that. I had it ranked in
the
my...
guy that hates sequels, yeah, a bit too high.
I love this sequel. I had it ranked in my top 10. I just loved the whole franchise, An American Tale. I mean, I know it kind of goes crazy bad after this, but Fievel Goes West is just, maybe it's a soft spot, maybe it's nostalgia talking, but I had it ranked in my top 10. Maybe you should adjust that for future reference. But as far as sequels go, I have no problem so far as Despicable Me 2 and An American Tale 2 being 2 of the sequels that have appeared in our top 100, because I will have a major problem with if certain sequels show up. These are not 2 of them that really ruffle my feathers too much. So I'm glad it made the list. Number 90 is fine. It's probably much better at 90 than 9. Maybe I forgot a 0 when I was doing my rankings. I'm assuming most of us have seen this, so let's start with Mike. Wow, how do you like American Tale 2?
It's been a long time, but going back and thinking about this franchise, I remember I had a bunch of the plush toys that were out at the time and everything else, and I find it strange that, and maybe it's because it's 2 different situations with these 2 movies, but Fievel Goes West, or the American Tale franchise overall, I don't mind it as much as I mind a rat cooking in France. So there is that.
You're alone in that, just so you know.
Well, it's Ratatouille is what it's really called. But Fievel, he's a good character. He's an interesting character. Whenever I would go back and watch it, I always somehow picture Sneezer from Tiny Toons being in there somewhere, even though I know he's not.
I know technically this wasn't Don Bluth, even though he was responsible, for the most part for the first one. But being kind of the first film to appear in that kind of subsection of animated films, find it kind of interesting. We'll see if any of his other films will appear. I think obviously we would all hope that the original one would appear if the sequel appeared, but we'll have to wait to see and find that out. Steve, how do you feel about our second sequel of the list here coming in at number 90?
I vaguely remember this one. Not enough to really make an informed opinion, but just based on like some of the animation stuff, I mean, I can definitely tell where it was in time when it came out, but yeah, I think that's about all I'm going to say on it because I can't really make an informed decision.
Dan, what about you?
I loved this movie as a kid. It was huge. I think as a kid, I enjoyed Bible Goes West so much more than the original. It's a lot more as a kid. It was a lot more fun. It's a lot more bright, of course, and or brighter, I should say, and just the Western aspect of it was interesting. As an adult, I can see that the original is superior. I would say to this one, at least. I think so, but I do enjoy it. It's funny because I feel like Fievel is one of those characters that I don't know, like if kids today or the youth today have any idea of him. Like I don't know if that's one that's really carried through generations. But
or if he would resonate with today's audience at all or not.
I don't know. Maybe you never know what how things work, but I did like I said, I liked it as a kid. It was a good of animated sequels out there. You could do far, far worse. And I remember this being like really big at the time. Like this could have been in my own head, but
I remember the same
it being
way.
so. But yeah, Fievel Goes West. There's been a long time since I thought about Fievel, but like I said with Goofy Movie and Oliver and Company, this is kind of making me want to go back and revisit it because it's been a while. Like Steve, I have not seen it in maybe a decade or more. So
I want to see. It makes me want to watch both of them back to back again because I kind of have similar memories to you, where I almost remember as a kid liking the second one better. And now I'm interested to go back and see them back to back to see what my reaction would be. But I think you hit it right on the head there. That as far as sequels go, you could do much worse. So that's how we start our second grouping of 10. We'll see where we go from there.
89.
All right, into the 80s we go. Number-wise, not year-wise. Year-wise, I'm somewhat almost surprised that we're going to have if I'm remembering right, our fourth film so far from the last 5 years. I'm surprised that we're having so many, I guess what I would call current or modern films that are making the list, but maybe it's not surprising that they're all at this end of the list. So going into number 89 is 2012's Paranorman. It appeared on 7 different lists. The highest it got ranked was 34th, so nobody ranked it, extremely high. 89 for Paranorman. Dan, did you have a chance to see this one? I know it just recently came out.
Yes, actually, I called it the best animated film that came out last year when I did like my end of the year reviews, and I stand by that completely. I love Paranorman. I think it's, again, I mentioned I love stop motion animation and claymation. It's beautifully done. It uses that really well because during last year you had this and like Frankenweenie, and to me this was so much better. The story went in a really unexpected way and got a lot darker but a lot deeper than I was expecting. The characters are all strong. There's a really good sense of humor to it. A lot of great visual gags. I do think this is one that will probably even grow in appreciation as the years go on. But I love Paranorman. It was a huge surprise to me because I really didn't have that much interest in it. But watching it, I was really impressed. It drew me in right from the get-go, and actually it's one I revisited a few times since then. So very happy to see it make it to the list, and I do think it's deserving. I honestly think you could make the argument that it could be even lower or higher on the list, like in the 70s or so. But I think right here is a fine place for it.
I agree that I think I haven't seen the movie in its entirety, but I've seen little bits and pieces as I was capturing sound clips and whatnot. I think the voice acting is very, very good, especially for some of the young people that got involved with it. I think like you said, it's better than Frankenweenie. Interested to get your take, Dan, because like I said, we've had like 4 or 5 films here from the last 5 years. Despicable Me 2, we had Rise of the Guardians, and Paranorman. Is this the best of that group so far?
Well, I haven't seen Despicable Me 2, so in fairness, I can't say it's better than that. But yes, I think it's superior than the other films in every way possible, all across the board. Like I said, with Rise of the Guardians, I think it's going to be forgotten rather quickly. I think Paranorman is a strong story that's really deep, and it's to me one of the biggest surprises I've had in the last few years. When a movie can kind of turn me from like a hater to a believer, it doesn't happen very often, but it happened with Paranorman. So,
Steve, have you seen this one? I know it just recently came out, so.
No, I haven't had a chance to see it, but other than what I saw, the trailer and everything else, it looks like it's a lot of fun. I mean, just from what I've looked at, I don't mind this animation style or anything, and then the voice cast looks, again, kind of star-studded, but I haven't seen the film, but I would I think, didn't this come out around the time of like the Frankenweenie?
It came out in August last year.
So I mean, it came out the same year anyway.
Yeah.
Because I would much rather watch this than that. But that I digress.
All right, so Paranorman in at number 89, and we'll see. Are we going to stay with more modern films for the rest of this segment, or are we going to go back in the past at some point?
88.
All right, we're going to keep the modern flavor going here with number 88. I'm just going to go back up 3 years before Paranorman to go with 2009's film from Sony, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Also on 7 lists, just like Paranorman was. The highest it got ranked. Remember, the highest ranking for Paranorman was 34. The highest ranking for Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was actually 12 by TV's Mr. Neil. Interesting that on Rotten Tomatoes, both Paranorman and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs scored identical at 87. So they both scored fairly well. I just want to say I have seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I think it's one of those films, because basically what we had, in my opinion, we had our Disney era with the resurgence with like Little Mermaid, Lion King, Aladdin, etc. And then it kind of started to fizzle out, through the Mulan years, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, etc. And then we had this insurgence of CGI, film, DreamWorks, Pixar, etc. And after a little while, it just seemed like we were getting the same thing over and over and over again. In my opinion, it was basically the same film, different cast of characters, different area, whatever, but it was the same film. It felt like it was within these last 5 years, 6 years, that we got some uniqueness, with films like Up and WALL-E, and for me, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Despicable Me. Some of those films kind of, in my opinion, broke the mold a little bit. And I really enjoyed Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I'm very glad it's on our list. I think it could be ranked even a little bit better than it is, than at 88. But I'm very happy that it's on our list. Dan, have you seen this one?
I have, and I talked about Paranorman surprising me. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs really did too. I love the book as a kid. The book is very different. It's mostly a picture book. There's not much words to it, so they changed a whole lot. There's very little resemblance to it as much. And my wife, who's a teacher, really can't stand this movie because how much they changed. But personally, I thought, like you said, it was unique. The visual gags in this were amazing. Like, visual gags can be kind of corny sometimes, but what they did and how they took a really simple story and really developed it even further was really well done. I still think I probably enjoy Paranorman a little bit more just because of my love for claymation. But yeah, like you said, compared to a lot of the more mediocre CGI films, especially from Sony, this is probably their best one. So, from what I can remember. Steve, have you seen Cloudy?
Yeah, this is one of the films my kid actually likes, which is funny. Just because it's kind of goofy. I like the funny monkey, and then a lot of the little gags that they have throughout the film. I find it to be one of the more enjoyable, and I do agree that a lot of the films within the last 5 years have actually been different. And I did notice too that a lot of the films previously to that were pretty much the same film over and over and over. Although now we're starting to get sequels of all these films that came out, so it's kind of treading down that same road again. But again, I think this film could have been, maybe a little bit higher on the list. I'm not sad that it's, at least on the list.
Yeah, and I think it's out of the more modern ones that we've had. I definitely think it's deserving, along with probably what Dan said with Paranorman. Definitely have no problem with them showing up. Mike, have you seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
Bits and pieces of it. I haven't seen it all the way through. Every time it comes on Cartoon Network, I always fall asleep or change the channel.
You imbecile! I'm just kidding. No, I think it's deserving. I think it's interesting that we are getting this influx of more current films going, and we'll see how many more we get with our last few films as we round out this first episode.
87.
All right, for number 87, we're going to 2007, and for our second anime film to appear on our list, and that is 2007's Persepolis, if I'm saying that right, and interesting to point out on this one, it was on 5 people's list, so it's again an example of something that didn't appear on a lot of lists, but on the list that did appear on it, it ranked really high. If we were just to look at the list that it appeared on and rank all of our top 100 that way, it would have ranked number 20th instead of number 87th. And the highest ranking it got was 10 from Double D, and a Rotten Tomato score of 96. So it seems like the people that have seen this film and are commenting or critiquing it all seem to be in agreement that it's high quality work. Dan, have you seen this one?
I have. I think it was 13th on my list, or around. It was in the top 20. I know that much. I love Persepolis. This and Wasp for Shares kind of make me a little bit sad that they're ending at this end of the list, but it's really great too. The animation is unique. It talks about a story that a lot of probably Americans are not aware of. It is, it's this really truthful story, this really honest story about this girl that grew up within, the 7 Years' War, just her, how much she lived in terror and how animation is used. There's a lot of negative space. There's a lot of darkness used in this movie, but there's also a lot of great comedy to it too. So Persepolis to me is one of those movies like with Walt Bashir that I hope more and more people go out and try to watch. I don't know. I could see a lot of people not liking it because it is unique. It's not necessarily something they're used to. The animation isn't cut and dry. But I think if you really try to view it with an open mind, I think you'll see that there is a universality into what they're saying, even though it's coming from a different culture, especially considering where we are, as a society. I think it's a really important movie. So, but I really wish this was a lot higher than it is. It is good to see that those that did list it have a lot of love for it, and I can see why, because I share that love.
Fair enough. All right, we'll see what we have next.
86.
All right, moving into our number 86th film, and I do apologize for saying that Persepolis was anime. I was getting it confused with number 86 because they're right next to each other. Persepolis as a foreign film and number 86 as an anime film, and we are going to break out of the 2000s and go all the way back to 1986 for the movie Ninja Scroll. It was on 6 people's lists. The highest it got ranked was number 5, and it is our second film to appear in our countdown that has had a 100 score from Rotten Tomatoes. We had Kiki's Delivery Service that had 100, and now Ninja Scroll that has 100. Dan, have you seen Ninja Scroll?
Honestly, this is the first one we've done that I have not seen. So,
and this is the only one that we've done that I have seen to this point.
Wow.
It's been a very long time since I've seen this.
Are we in the Twilight Zone?
My mind is blown right now.
Yes, we are. We're in the Twilight Zone, and we've gone way beyond the outer limits.
So, Mike,
it's been a very. I think I saw this. When did you say it came out?
86.
86. I saw this 10 years after it came out, somewhere around 95, 10 years later, 95, 96. Outside of the action and the style of the anime, I don't remember a lot about the story. This is one of those things where I was living with friends, and
you had friends.
Her husband put it on, and we watched it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that was good. but I haven't seen it since. But I do remember at least having seen it at one point in my life.
And now we have another film for Dan to mark down as films he's going to watch.
Yeah. My Netflix queue is going to get angry at me.
After this whole countdown's over.
Yeah.
Steve, have you seen Ninja Scroll?
No.
And I have not either. So I guess we will not do this film justice, except for Mike's vaguely foggy memory of it. But assuming from the Rotten Tomato score of 100, that someone had this as highly ranked as number 5, and that with only being on 6 lists, it got all the way up to number 86 on our list. Should all make it seem like it definitely belongs. It beat Persepolis out by 1 point. So definitely interesting to see where we're going here in the mixture that we're getting. Let's see what we have here with our final 5 films of today's episode.
85.
All right, so it's been a while since we've been there. I think the last Disney film we had was at number 94. And so with number 85, we will go back to Disney and see what they have to offer us in the form of 1996's Pocahontas. It was on 9 people's lists, which I believe is the most list a movie has appeared on so far. Goofy Movie was on 8. James and the Giant Peach was on 8. So 9 is the most lists that we've had so far from Pocahontas. The highest it was ranked was number 32, so nobody ranked it, in the top 30 at all. Rotten Tomato score of 56. Yikes. 366 points. Mike, how do you feel about Pocahontas coming in at number 85?
It's all right. The only thing I remember the movie and I know the story, but the main thing I remember from this is the song "Colors of the Wind." Sadly, even though I don't generally say I'm ashamed that I'm a film score buff and a film soundtrack buff, this was one of the Disney soundtracks I did have when it came out. I don't know why. But overall, the animation is good. It's not the best animation Disney has ever done. The story was interesting to a certain point, especially at the time. If you watched it in the time it was released, I don't know if it holds up to today's standards, specifically to storytelling. Animation, it might. But I liked it. I liked the voice cast. I thought it was pretty cool.
I think my major problem with Pocahontas is most of Disney films have been based on, basically based on fiction, based on fairy tales, based on fantasy worlds, etc. And Pocahontas, I guess, tries to cloud that, it seems like, because it's based on not based on, but it shares a character that really did exist in history. And where I run into problems with that is it gives kids aren't smart enough to know that when they hear about Pocahontas later in life, that it is so far removed from this film. This is in no way an accurate portrayal of any of the historical events. I'm not saying it was intending to be, but it leads for some confusion there. So I kind of have issues with it from a teacher standpoint and from a historical standpoint. But I guess that's more just my own personal gripe about it, not something that it really, not a mistake or not something wrong, I guess it did. But I don't really care for it that much in that respect. I do, agree that the music's decent. It was one of the last, for me, of that Disney era that kind of, for me, it really ended after the major 4 there, but kind of a little bit existed with this, and even, I guess, Mulan and maybe Hunchback a little bit, but by that point it was all just kind of fading off into not as goodness. It's trying to resurge nowadays, but I expected Pocahontas to be somewhere on the list, I guess, so I'm not surprised. I think 85 is a fine spot for it. Dan, what do you think?
I think Pocahontas is, pretty much an average movie. I do agree that it does have some well-made songs. Just beyond the river bend, some of the characters, it is Disneyfying a very strange tale that, like you mentioned, it's kind of taking something and making a hero out of who in all sense was probably in real life a pedophile, 6-year-old man going out with a 14-year-old girl. But in Disney's eyes, it's a lot different. But I don't know. To me, it's like you can have that issue with a lot of things because we tend to do that a lot with historical, stories when we look back and change them. And, if you just look at Columbus or Paul Revere, like a lot of those stories are twisted on their head because of works of fiction. So that doesn't really bother me as much. But to me, it's just a lot of the characters, like it was that standard Disney formula, and it just kind of tried to copy it, and it just at this time it was like the diminishing returns. At this point, it wasn't nearly as good as something like Lion King or the other films that are far superior to it. It did its job, but it didn't go that extra level or have like characters that really stood out. They were kind of a lot of the side characters were just rather generic, and they were just nothing really special about it. Like even the villain was kind of dumb, but it wasn't a horrible movie in the 80s. I probably would put this behind a lot of the other films we just went over, but I'm glad it's not any higher. So
the funny thing is, I actually enjoy Mulan more than this.
I kind of have to agree with you.
So,
wow, did we all just agree with Mike?
Yeah.
And the world is about to break.
Yes. No, I mean I've seen this film. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's also among that last remaining of actually animated Disney films before they went the entire Pixar route. Funny note is, Batman is in the film.
Wait, what?
Christian Bale.
Oh, jeez, that's right.
I had to throw that in there. I thought it was funny, but yeah. So it's not that bad. There's funny moments with the animals mostly, but other than that, it's kind of ultimately one of those forgettable.
Frank Welker's in this too. Anyway,
he's in everything though.
All right. Well, we all remember what happened last time we dipped into the Disney pool. Let's see if it has that same effect moving forward.
84.
So if we were to come up with a theme for this first episode, this first group of 20 movies, it seems like it's Disney and it's modern. And I guess that is all encapsulated here with our number 84 film, which is 2009's Princess and the Frog. It was on 7 lists. The highest it got ranked was 23, Rotten Tomatoes score of 84, so it's pretty highly ranked actually for Rotten Tomatoes. 2009's Princess and the Frog. Dan, have you seen this one?
I have. I did appreciate Disney trying to go back and go back to classic animation after kind of going away for such a long time. It is, I don't know. It is. I could see why. Then they quickly went back to their CGI animation. They didn't really stay with that path all that much, but it was a kind of an interesting nostalgia trip seeing them go with a lot of those characters. It did feel like your classic Disney movie, and I did appreciate that they went to New Orleans and trying to go to a setting and to a story that they've never really touched on before. Overall, though, I don't know. Nothing. It's okay. Like I don't hate the film. I don't really love it. It's just, it's more notable because of when it came out than its own quality, I guess.
It beat Pocahontas by 5 points. Is it better than Pocahontas?
Oof. I don't think so. I think the songs of Pocahontas give it a little bit of an edge over The Princess and the Frog.
Steve, have you seen this one? I know it's somewhat.
Yeah, I've seen this one. It's not bad. I did like the fact that Disney tried to go back to their classic animation to some degree. But I didn't find myself liking the songs as much in this as I'm kind of in the same boat. I'd rather listen to Pocahontas songs than this. The story's not all that bad. I mean, again, it's kind of that typical formula of Disney films. So, the whole princess aspect and, I don't know, it gets old. That means it disapproves with our opinions.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
This is the worst Disney movie in the last 30 years because of one thing. First of all, she's not even a princess. She's a regular friggin' girl. She doesn't become a princess until she marries the god prince. whatsoever. And it's just so ass backwards. The animation is okay. I prefer the Disney CGI. But at the end of the movie, I was like, okay, so they're taking the whole princess kisses the frog thing and turns him back into a prince and reversing that whole thing. That's just lame and stupid and dumb.
Lame
and
and
at the
stupid
end of it,
and dumb.
lame and stupid and dumb. You got that right. And at the end of it, it's like, oh, well, she can marry the guy and the curse will be broken. Yay! The only two good things about this movie is that Jim Cummings is in it and Keith David is in it as two of the voices. That's the only two good, decent things about this damn movie. If I never see this movie again, it will be too soon.
Well, I guess I don't need to see it anymore. So did you just say that you prefer the Disney CGI over Disney classic animation?
When it comes to this movie, yes.
I don't know. I don't know why you have such a hatred for it.
I cannot stand this movie. This movie was so... Pocahontas is 10 times better than this.
Your issue with it saying, like, hey, she doesn't become a princess until whatever, does that mean Aladdin's not good because he's not technically a prince until he marries Jasmine?
But no. The reason why in Princess and the Frog why it sucks is because they say that the spell won't be broken until she marries the prince.
Okay.
My confusion is...
and becomes a princess.
Okay, I'm fine if you have a problem with part of the plot or part of the story,
The plot
etc.
is
No, hold on. I'm fine if you have a problem with that, but why does that problem then translate into the animation is not as good?
Because I just didn't care for it.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify. All right, so some strong opinions about Princess and the Frog. We'll see how much strong opinions we have on our final three films for today.
83.
All right, time for number 83. Still staying with some modern films here. 2004, and the film for number 83 is Polar Express from Castle Rock Entertainment. It was on 8 lists, so it appeared on quite a few lists there. Steve, you had this ranked all the way up at number 7, so you were the highest one for this one, which is the first time we've seen you have a film as the highest ranked one. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 56. I ranked this as well, but we'll let you go first, Steve, since you had it ranked a little higher than the rest of us. How do you feel about Polar Express coming in at number 83?
Well, I like the film for multiple reasons. One, it's showing this kid's journey of disbelief and the whole Santa Claus thing and everything related to Christmas. And then his journey and transformation into finally believing by the end of the film. 2, you have the CG style on this not only is borderline realistic to some degree because even the conductor looks like Tom Hanks, and the bum on top of the train. So I mean, there's a lot of like almost realistic kind of looks to it. I found the story to be. I mean, granted, it's nothing like exceptionally spectacular or anything, but it's a fun kind of Christmas film, and again, I like the performances between Tom Hanks and all the various characters in the film, and then some of the songs that are in it, and again, just the CG in it, just kind of at that time was stellar for what came out, and it was pretty cool for like IMAX kind of perspectives with it.
I definitely thought it was unique and visually something that seemed like we hadn't seen before. Do you think 83 is not a good enough ranking for it?
I mean, I'm fine with it being at 83. I don't have a problem with it because I'm sure there are better films that are ahead of it. I'm sure I'll come into a point where some CG films I'd rather were below this one, but no, I mean, I'm happy that it's not in the 90s at least, but I'm glad that it's on here.
Dan, what do you think about Polar Express?
I'm not a big fan, honestly. Regarding animation, I really don't like it at all. This is, I think, before stop motion animation really was there, quite there yet. It was on its way, but I just think the characters look lifeless. I think, you have the common complaint is like the dead eyes, and I think that is a case here. And I just thought, like, unlike something with Cloudy with Chance of Meatballs that took like a children's story that was very basic and added some life to it, to me, the story for the Polar Express really didn't add that much, and it just felt like a series of events and not actually a story being told, which is kind of what the book is. But I don't hate the film, but I don't know. To me, this is when like Robert Zemeckis got stuck in his stop motion animation phase, and out of all of them, it's probably the best. It's much better than Beowulf, much better than A Christmas Carol, but I don't put it as highly. It seems like I don't put it as highly as you guys.
Mike, have you seen Polar Express?
Let me ask Steve, wasn't Hanks motion captured for this?
I believe he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was performance capture. And again, it's another one of the Sony animation.
Right, yeah.
So same studio that did
pieces of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing all the way through.
It's one of those films that, and I have to be honest here, when I first saw it, it's one of those films that kind of has to grow on you.
Yeah.
After a couple of watchings, I enjoy the film. The first run through, I was kind of like meh, and then after I've come to like it. I mean, granted, it's nothing spectacular, but it's one of those movies I like watching every Christmas season.
All right. Well, Polar Express, I think too it had good timing because it did come out around Christmas season. I think it looked like something that was unique. It looked like something that was appropriate. The marketing was huge behind it, especially with Tom Hanks. So I actually haven't seen it, so I can't give you my opinion on it. But I did expect it to fall somewhere in our top 100, so I'm not upset about that. Anybody else?
Did it come out in November or December of 2004? Does anybody know off the top of your head?
It came out in November, United States wide, but Chicago, it came out in October.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, when they do the Christmas movies, not just animation, and they put them close to it, then depending on which ones it is, some take off, some don't. And I think this is one of those ones that did take off for a long time, and it still does now. Like Steve said, it's one that you can watch. If you liked it when you first saw it, it's one you can watch every Christmas.
All right. Well, only 2 films left to talk about for today. We'll see what those 2 films are.
82.
All right. Coming in at number 82. I believe this is the first time we have gone back before the 80s. I don't think we've had a film that wasn't in either the 2000s. We've had a few 90s, a few 80s. This is going back before that, which I believe is a first. It's also going to be the first film that has appeared on half of the submitted list. We're going back to 1970s Aristocats, which is on 10 lists, so that's half of the list. Going back to Disney, going all the way back to 1970. Nobody had it ranked higher than myself. I had it ranked at number 21. And it comes in at number 82. I have a soft spot, and I know this is like easily one of the Disney films that sometimes gets forgotten. We talked about Oliver and Company in that respect. I think Aristocats, Robin Hood, in some respects, get lost because they're not the big names like the classic Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, or Jungle Book, or stuff like that. But I think Aristocats is really good. I love the diversity in the music. I love this film in general. I wouldn't rank it as like the best Disney film of all time or anything like that. So I'm not completely upset that it's in at 82. I'm glad it made the list. I'm glad it's ahead of Oliver and Company and some of the other Disney stuff we've talked about. But I'm not upset. I mean, I know I had it ranked number 21, but I didn't expect it to be that high. Mike, what do you think about Aristocats?
It's got some cool songs in it, but I'm more of the dog lover Disney film persuasion than the cat lover Disney film persuasion.
I think that's the only one.
Yeah, well, no, there was those evil Siamese twins in the dog movie.
Yeah,
but anyway,
Dan, what do you think about Aristocats?
I do enjoy it. Like you said, it's probably of all the Disney movies, it's probably in the middle for me for the most part. I do love the jazzy songs and the jazzy score to it. That's meshes well with the overall story. I mean, I love the character of O'Malley and the voice acting of Phil Harris. I think overall there was a lot of cool characters, but yeah, I do enjoy it. Usually when I hear Aristocats, or the first thing I think of is that classic stand-up comedy joke, The Aristocrats, which is notably the most dirty joke ever said. But regarding this movie, I'm glad to see it. I do place this much higher than something like Oliver and Company or Pocahontas or really any of the other Disney movies. To me, it has a lot of those classic Disney voices that like you hear them and you just automatically associate them with Disney movies. So you may not know their names. They have those voices that are like in movies like Dumbo or Aristocats, and it just makes you feel like a kid again when you hear their voices. It's really nostalgic in that end. So, but yeah, a good spot for it, I guess.
Steve, your thoughts on Aristocats?
It's one of those. It's one of those earlier films that I don't care for as much. I mean, I don't mind the film itself, but I don't particularly care for a lot of the animal films that are pre-1990. I don't know. They just don't pull for me. I don't know if it's because I didn't watch them growing up as a kid and I watched them as an adult, that they just don't kind of linger with me. So I don't really have a opinion. I don't hate the fact that it's on the list, because I mean, a lot of the Disney films it's kind of hard not to have on the list, being that they've all kind of had some kind of an impact on animation, but I personally don't care for it.
Fair enough. Well, there's only one spot left in today's episode. Lots of films out there that people are probably waiting to hear. We'll see if one of them is our number 81 film.
81.
All right, rounding off our episode today, we've gone from 100 all the way down to number 81. And guess what? We're going to end with a modern film from 2013. And our second Marvel/DC entry on our countdown, and that is Batman Dark Knight Returns Part 2. I don't know if we would consider this a sequel or not, since it's really just a second part of the other one. But it appeared on 6 lists. The highest it ranked was actually number 6. 21 Network ranked it all the way up at number 6. 394 points for Batman Dark Knight Returns Part 2. I will hand it over to the rest of the panel.
I have yet to see this part because I was waiting for the deluxe edition release where both parts are in the same release, so I could watch the movie in its entirety instead of, well, I've seen part 1. Part 1's damn awesome.
Part 2.
Okay. I'll let you go in a second. Put your tongue away, Joker. I'm sure part 2 is simply amazing as well as part 1 was, but I have yet to see it. I got to get the combined release. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. I have seen part 1 and part 2. I've watched them back to back. Now that I have them, part 2 is the ultimate battle between Batman and the Joker and Batman and Superman. It's also that's the Dark Knight Returns. For those not familiar with it, it's based off the comic by Frank Miller, who forever changed Batman. Well, this was done beautifully on the animation scope, because not only do you have the grittiness of the Frank Miller dialogue and type of animation and everything, but it shows all the random extremes that go on between the Joker and Batman on a personal level, as well as some ramifications of something that someone tells Superman to do, and Batman having to kind of put Superman in his place before making some kind of a change in his regime, I should say, without trying to spoil it for any that haven't seen it. But it's I think that it holds up really well, and it stays true to the Frank Miller adaptation.
Yeah, I
Go. No, I was just going to say real quick before you go, Dan, kind of to preface this, because you disagreed with their take on World's Finest. So how do you feel are they on par, or are they still overrating this one?
No, actually, I agree that this, when I talked about World's Finest, the one thing I was bringing up was The Dark Knight Returns, and this is actually the movie I was referencing. When you look at, because The World's Finest has that dynamic between Batman and Superman, it is so much better handled than this. They're not even. I mean, they are. I mean, some people could say it's unfair to compare them because one is a Saturday morning cartoon and another one's like a direct to DVD release that's rated PG-13. Fair enough, but still, it is. This, like I said, takes that format of film, even direct to DVD film, and does some things very interesting with it. I think this stands far and above like all the DC animated movies that went straight to DVD. Stands far and above all of them. Some people could argue, well, yes, it's because of the source material. All it's doing is taking one of the greatest, one of the most notable comics of all time and putting it on the screen, which is true. But even great source material doesn't always mean that you're going to get a great return or a great movie. There have been countless occasions where great comic books, great books have not translated well, or they were not made well. In this case, it stayed true, like Steve said. The animation was flawless. It was able to there was enough little bits to remind you of Frank Miller's art, or the art of the comic. And there's so much that happens in that part too. Like it never feels overbloated. It never feels like they're rushing through things too much. Everything gets its proper time and proper place. And to me too, this is the first DC animated movie to use that PG-13 rating and use it wisely and use it well. So I'm really glad it made the list. Is it better than something like we've gone over? Maybe not. I had it in the 90s for my list, just because it's. But I do think, as of right now, of all the animated films I've watched this year currently, it's superior to everything I've seen. I haven't seen an animated movie that is nearly as good as this one. So I do think the second half is better than the first half, but I don't think it is kind of unfair because the first half does a lot of the legwork. In the second half, you get all the payoff. So, but yeah, Mike, I definitely advise picking it up because it's pretty amazing.
I ranked that actually number 12 on my top 100 just because of how great the film is.
Mike, any other thoughts on it?
As I said, I've been waiting for the deluxe to watch them both back to back. The first film, as Dan said, does a lot of setup, but the first film is still a damn good story. As far as Dan's comments about using the PG-13 rating most effectively, it does because Dark Knight Returns is a very, very dark comic. I mean, it's something that they probably had to cut back on a lot of the animation stuff to just get it to a PG-13 rating. But I mean, I'm glad to see that it's here.
Fair enough. Well, looking back at our first group of 20 here, a couple observations. Some diversity here. We've had a couple anime films, Kiki's Delivery Service, Ninja Scroll. We've had some foreign films with Waltz with Bashir and Persepolis. We've had definitely an influx of Disney films. We've had some modern day films. So we're going to get everybody's thoughts about this first group of 20 real quick after this break.
Yay! No, yay! Wow.
All right, as I said, we've had a little bit of mixture of everything. We're going to just do a quick roundtable here, go around the table, and see what people's reactions are now that we've had a little bit of a chance to let some of these films settle in. Like I said, we've had two anime films, 2 foreign films. We've had 2 comic book films. We've had 2 sequels. We've had only 1 film that predated the 80s with our 1970 film Aristocats. A whole lot of modern films. Despicable Me 2, Rise of the Guardians, Paranorman, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Princess and the Frog, So a lot of ones from the last 5 to 8 years. A good deal of Disney. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Disney films, if I'm counting right. So starting with Dan, just looking at our first 20 here, 100 through 81, what are your reactions so far?
I guess on the positive side, I'm glad to see that we do, regarding just format wise, regarding medium, regarding like genre, we do have a variety there. Like you mentioned, anime, we do have foreign films, we have claymation, we have stop motion animation. So there is a variety there, and I think variety is good. There are, with 100 to 81, I think you do kind of have a crapshoot. You're going to have those movies that are really, really good that probably deserve to be higher. Cough, cough, Waltz of Bashir and Persepolis, but just haven't been seen by a lot of people. And you're gonna have, I think, those movies that are fresh in people's minds that may make the list, like Rise of the Guardians or other films like that that maybe don't deserve it, but because they're recent, they did make the cut. I don't know. Overall, I'm happy. I am a little disappointed about a couple of movies that I've saw them already, but I'm probably gonna say this a lot. I do, in the long run, I think it's good because hopefully it will get people to go out and try to experience those movies and try to see what they're like and see if they think they're better or if they deserve higher. Like, for example, I have never seen Ninja Scroll, so while we were at break, I added it to my Netflix queue, and I will be checking it out to see, if I think it should be higher as well. So to me, the numbers can be what they are. I like more so diving deep in and discovering new movies and seeing, what other people think of different mediums. As you can see, we all have different opinions here, which is good. So I don't know, to me, that's the best. So numbers are one, but you're gonna have that.
I think the other thing that you get a little more at this end of any of these countdowns is you'll have a few more usually towards this end where not everyone's seen it, or one person's seen it, or two or three of the people have seen it, not everybody. And I think as we move forward, it's more than likely going to be the case where we get to the point where they're just films that everybody's seen, maybe. That's just a guess, but that's sometimes what happens when you go start at 100 and work your way up. I am interested to see that we've already had 2 sequels, and to see how many more we see, or is there any more sequels that are deserving to be on there outside of a couple. So how will that come out? To see kind of the rankings amongst the genres, like as far as, if you were going to take all the Marvel/DC films in the order we put them in, are we getting it right? If we take in the Disney films, are we getting the order right? Some stuff like that. So Steve, looking back at this first group of 20, what are your initial reactions?
Kind of surprised in some of them.
Along the way, are there any that were just, in your opinion, any that just shouldn't be on our countdown, or any that should be very much higher?
I wouldn't say that some of them shouldn't be on the countdown, but at the same time, I think some of them should have been a little higher. I like the Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs. I like the Dark Knight Returns Part 2. I definitely think that one should be a lot higher than where it's at. For that one, at least the top 50, just for what it is, and because it stayed true to the adaptation and or the source material. So I think that those should have been a little bit higher. But again, some of them I'm not familiar with, so I can't really comment. But then the other ones, I can't really disagree where they're at.
Mike, I think you said something, I don't remember if it was on air or off air, but with the influx of movies from the last 5 or 6 years, there's 2 ways to look at that. Either one, it's saying that in a bad light that we're just more conscious of those because they're more recent and our memories more fresh, and so we're giving them more credence than they deserve. Or in a positive light, a lot of them are appearing now in the countdown versus higher up. So what's your thoughts about all these films from the more recent years?
More recent years, I mean, like with me and Despicable Me, with that franchise, those characters are so lovable, each one for different reasons. Yes, the stories might not be the best animated film story ever, but specifically with those, with those characters, it's just so heartwarming in a lot of places. And and it's an evolution between DM1 and DM2. As far as the rest of it, personally, I think Princess and the Frog should be at 100, and everything else is better than that movie. I don't care for that movie whatsoever. I just don't. That's probably the only one that I would really switch around. The rest I'm fine with so far. And yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing. It's like, we've gone over 4 decades pretty much. 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
Well, I mean, there's more than one decade so far in the 2000s.
But what I'm saying is we've gone through those 4 decades in this section of the countdown, right? So, I mean, it's a nice variety. Sure, there are a lot more modern films than I would probably like. I wish it was more evened out over the 100 list, but the problem is if we have the more modern films closer to, say, like top 40, top 30, people are going to say, oh, well, that just came out. How is that the best? Or how is that this? How is that that? And, I know we ran into problems with that on the top 100 animated series countdown. But, I mean, yeah, I guess it is good that we're getting a lot of the modern stuff out. As you said earlier, Kev, as we go along, we get to top 50, 40, 30, it's going to be a lot more of stuff that people have seen. I'll say right now, for me, I was even surprised when Ninja Scroll came up, because that's like one of the only animes I've ever seen. So, and I know for a fact that as soon as Kevin says, hey, this is the next anime film on the list, I'll immediately hit my mute button, because I don't watch that genre. I'm not saying I dislike the genre, it's not my thing. And other than that, I mean, I think we're off to a good start. I think we have a nice variation of different animated films in the first section here.
So just going back to Dan real quick before we close out the discussion this time, anything as far as looking forward into the rest of the countdown, stuff you're scared about, stuff you're excited about, what are you curious the most about as we move forward?
Well, my number 2 started this list, so I'm really hoping my number 1 doesn't start the next list, because that would make me feel like that. I'm curious to see if this continuation of variety of genre continues. I'm also curious to see if this is the end of the modern stuff. If we start to get more into the more classic, and more acclaimed movies from the past. I expected it with the top 20. Does that now dissipate more as we move on and we get closer and closer? So, and to me, I'm really curious, to see where some of the how the studios stack up to each other, like the Pixar versus Disney versus DreamWorks versus Sony and all those different areas. Who's really going to reign supreme? That'll be interesting to see. So.
All right, well, there you have it, folks. Numbers 100 through 81 are in the books. Join us next week when we'll be counting down numbers 80 to 61. For now, I am TFG and Mike with
Steve Megatron Phillips
and Optimus Solo
and Movie Revolt Dan.
Thank you for listening. Until next time, unleash the geek in you.
You've just listened to GeekCast Radio on the GeekCast Radio Network. There are several ways to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show. First, visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on all of our different podcasts. Second, you can rate our show and leave us feedback in iTunes. Third, follow us on Twitter at GeekCast Radio. Fourth, become a fan on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/GeekCast Radio. Call the voicemail line, 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you are leaving the message for and your name. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.